The letter that arrived 20 years late. Have you ever wished you could speak to someone you lost years ago? What if one day, out of nowhere, a letter arrived from that person? A letter written decades earlier. A letter carrying words they never got the chance to say. This is the story of a letter that arrived 20 years late, and the life it changed forever. In a quiet town lived a man named Ethan. At 30 years old, Ethan appeared successful. He had a good job, a nice house, and a comfortable life. But deep inside, there was an emptiness he could never explain. When Ethan was only 10 years old, his father, Daniel, passed away after a serious illness. Daniel had been a kind and loving father. He wasn't rich. He didn't own a large business, but he possessed something much more valuable: wisdom. Ethan still remembered sitting beside his father on warm summer evenings. His father would tell him stories about courage, honesty, kindness, and perseverance. But those moments ended far too soon. After Daniel's death, Ethan and his mother struggled for years. Life was difficult. Money was scarce. Every day felt like a battle. As Ethan grew older, he became determined to escape poverty. He studied hard. He worked harder, and eventually he succeeded. But in the process, something changed. He became obsessed with achievement. Work became his entire life. He rarely visited friends. He had little time for family. And although he had everything he once dreamed of, he often felt strangely unhappy. One rainy afternoon, Ethan returned home from work. A pile of mail sat near his front door. Bills, advertisements, bank statements, nothing unusual. Then he noticed an old yellow envelope. It looked different from the others. The paper had faded with age. His name was written on the front in familiar handwriting. Ethan froze. His heart began to race. He knew that handwriting. It belonged to his father. For several seconds, he couldn't move. His hands trembled as he picked up the envelope. The postmark was faded and barely visible. But one thing was clear. The letter had been written 20 years earlier, before his father died. Confused and emotional, Ethan slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten letter. At the top were the words, "To my son Ethan, if you are reading this, then I am no longer with you." Tears immediately filled Ethan's eyes. He sat down and continued reading. "My dear son, I don't know what kind of man you will become. I don't know where life will take you. But I want you to remember something. Success is a wonderful thing. Work hard for it. Dream big. Fight for your goals. But never allow success to become more important than the people you love. One day you may earn money. One day you may own a beautiful house. One day others may admire your achievements. But none of those things will hold your hand when you are lonely. None of them will laugh with you during happy moments. And none of them will love you the way family does." Ethan stopped reading. His eyes drifted around the silent room. For the first time, he noticed how empty his house felt. The expensive furniture, the large television, the decorations. None of it brought comfort. None of it could replace human connection. After a few minutes, Ethan continued reading. "My son, you will make mistakes. Everyone does. Do not be ashamed of failure. Failure is a teacher. The people who succeed are not those who never fall. They are the ones who stand up after falling. And when life becomes difficult, remember this. Kindness is never wasted. Help others whenever you can. The world always needs more kindness." Ethan remembered how often his father helped neighbors, even when they had little money themselves. He remembered seeing his father share food with struggling families. At the time, he hadn't understood why. Now he did. As he reached the final page, his emotions became overwhelming. The last section read, "There is one final thing I want to tell you. If I am gone before you read this letter, do not spend your life wishing for more time with me. Instead, spend your life making the most of the time you have with others. Call your mother. Visit your friends. Tell people you love them while you still can, because the greatest regret in life is not losing money. It is losing moments that can never return. And remember this, my son. I may not be beside you, but I am proud of you, always. With all my love, Dad." By the time Ethan reached the final words, tears were streaming down his face. For years he had chased promotions, achievements, and success. Yet the wisdom he needed most had been sitting inside an envelope all along. A letter delayed by circumstances nobody could explain. A letter that arrived exactly when he needed it. The next morning, Ethan did something he hadn't done in months. He called his mother. Then he visited her. They spent hours talking, laughing, and sharing memories. Over the following weeks, he reconnected with old friends. He made time for family. He volunteered in his community. And for the first time in years, he felt truly happy. Not because he had more money, not because he achieved another goal, but because he rediscovered what mattered most. Years later, Ethan framed his father's letter and placed it above his desk. Whenever life became stressful, he would read it again. And every time, he was reminded of the lesson hidden inside. A lesson that arrived 20 years late, yet somehow arrived at exactly the right moment. Because sometimes the most important message in life isn't the one we hear first. It's the one we finally understand. Thank you for listening. And if there is someone you love, don't wait. Tell them today. Because some letters arrive late, but some opportunities never return.